Hey everyone, this is Renee from Tippy.com. Welcome to our weekly show focused on everything iPhone. From news and how-tos to app and accessory reviews, this is iPhone Live. It is Wednesday, December 14th, and joining me tonight is the CIO of Nickelfish and the co-host of Iterate, Mr. Seth Clifford. How are you, Seth?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I am doing very well, thank you. Georgia is not here. She is away this week. She is on secret assignment. It is classified. I cannot confirm or deny what she is doing, but it is something which is other.
She's on a self-esteem retreat.
She is. But taking her place tonight, filling in, pinch hitting, so to speak, is our special guest, the senior editor of Electronista, John Fingus. How you doing, John?
Hey, I'm doing fine. Thanks for asking.
No, not at all. It was very gracious of you to join us. We thought maybe we'd talk a little bit about consumer electronics of an Apple nature.
Yep. Well, that's something I specialize in.
So, before we get started, I'll just go through some meta really quickly. Ali has done her weekly mod. If you want to learn how to replace a shattered or unresponsive iPhone 3G or 3GS digitizer assembly for cheaper than Apple will do you, she takes you through it, do-it-yourself style. Check that out. We're also hip deep in the Reader's Choice Awards. We pick the categories, you pick the votes. We have social networking apps up yesterday, photo, video, and music apps up today. If you haven't already, just go over to tippy.com and register your vote. On with the show. The first thing we wanted to talk about was iPhone 4S. It has been 2 months. And a lot of us, the people from Tippy and Mobile Nations and the podcast got together and shared our thoughts on what we felt, whether the iPhone had, ultimately disappointed us or whether it's as good as we initially thought. It was better. I haven't got John's opinion on this yet, so I'm kind of curious, John. How's the iPhone 4S doing for you now?
Oh, I'm actually quite liking it because for one thing, I was coming from an iPhone 3GS, so it felt like a quantum leap in terms of where I was actually coming from. But it's just proven to be kind of a workhorse for me. I haven't really had those battery life issues that some people have had, so that's good. But I think I just really like that camera. I tend to I love being able to take an actual good photo with my smartphone, not just a nice enough photo. And Siri is really handy because it's a lot easier for setting timers and just a lot of reminders and a lot of the usual errands that I tend to take care of.
Seth, you mentioned also that I don't think you've had any battery issues with it either, have you?
No, not really. It was a little strange right in the beginning, but I kind of think that was just because the battery was new and, you kind of have to use the batteries and the devices for a little while before they kind of calibrate themselves and figure out what the length of the day looks like and, the time between charges. So after the first couple of days, it pretty much leveled out and it's been all right for me.
And 2 months later, I mean, you did share your thoughts in the article, but if you give us the
bullet points. Basically, I said there's a lot of stuff that's easily quantifiable. It's faster. It's nicer going between apps because there's even less lag. The camera is fantastic. There's stuff that you can measure, but what's really, I think, overall nice about it is how all those things kind of hang together and provide I think, like John said, it's a workhorse for him. I pound away at this thing all day, and it hangs together really nicely. And then the other part of my comments basically centered on Siri in that I didn't think much of FaceTime when it came out. I was like, that's really great. It's video chat. That's terrific. And I've used it occasionally since then, but ultimately it's there and I never think about it. But I use Siri every single day. And I was just telling somebody about it yesterday, how interesting it is, how it completely changes the way you use your device and how it's transformative in the way that you basically you do things with your phone now that you didn't think you would do. You try it as a lark, oh, let's see what happens if Siri does, what does she say when I say this? And now it's become an integral part of certain parts of my day, like driving, answering texts, sending texts, making phone calls, all the things that I would ordinarily just shy away from doing while driving, I can do very easily and safely now. And that's just one part of it. You know, like John said, like setting alarms and stuff, like little annoying things are so much easier. Looking up words, like, you know, what does this word mean? What does that word mean? Like little things that you don't think about, you start to do, and then it becomes this indispensable part of your workflow. And I'm enjoying the heck out of it. I really am.
Yeah, for me, it solved three problems. I have good reception where I live. I get like 4 or 5 bars, but at my mom's place, I'd get 1 or 2. And if I held it wrong, if I pressed that network pause play button, I would lose a call. And the iPhone 4S is just rock solid. I've not had a single problem with it. The camera is fantastic. I can use that almost completely as my day-to-day camera. And Siri I'm also having a great time with it. Some of our writers, like Chris Aldroyd, said it was like a 10% or 20% success rate, and it was driving him crazy. And he was kind of, he didn't think it was a very good upgrade. So there's all manner of opinions there. But it seems like, John, and we get this a lot with Apple. Something new comes out, all the articles love it, and then a month later, everyone's hating on it. And we saw that with Siri over the last couple weeks. Is that like a normal reaction, or is that just certain sites looking for certain links?
Yeah, I'd say that's normal, and that's not even necessarily clickbait or some kind of like anti-Apple kind of bias. It's just like after like that initial sort of glow passes, like you start to like pick up on those things that kind of annoy you about what you're using. So the difference is that you may turn those from like a molehill into a mountain, and it is like you have to sort of guard yourself and say, okay, well, it's not necessarily that bad. And a lot of the quirks on the iPhone 4S, at least, like, seem to be not that bad. Like battery life is still kind of an issue for some people, like, but it doesn't seem to be as much of that. Oh my gosh, my phone's draining in 3 hours kind of chaos that we had.
It's not LTE bad.
Yeah, tell me about it.
It's kind of like, but it does seem like some people woke up in the morning, rolled over sober, and Siri didn't look the way that she'd looked the night before. I'm struggling to get. Well, I mean, like, it is a beta service. Some people were upset that Apple was advertising it as a main feature when it was beta. Some other people said it has to be beta because you need all that data to make a better sampling of the voice. But I think we're moving into that age where software is getting released faster and quicker, and companies are much more comfortable with fixing things on the fly, and even Apple is comfortable with not getting it perfect right away.
Yeah, I'm not really thrilled about that movement, though. I'd rather people wait until things are at least half-baked, if not fully baked.
We'd not have a single Google service, Seth.
Yeah, and that's kind of my point. Like, there's so much stuff that gets released now. Not just Google. I mean, a lot of people release stuff that is by no means ready, and not even just like software services. I mean, hardware with bad firmware on it, and people get the stuff, and it's pretty much broken out of the box. And the company,
you have to mail it back to get a modem upgrade for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Oh, listen, there's a bug fix coming. Don't worry. And that's not the kind of consumer experience you want when people spend a bunch of money on your product.
We'll give you an email client. Just wait till 2012. You'll get your email client.
Yeah, that said, the like for Apple, I guess a beta means a different thing than it seems to mean for, say, RIM or Motorola or Google, for that matter. For Apple, like, beta is like, well, like you were kind of saying, it has to be a beta because the likelihood that you'll have something that's so complete that everybody says, right, it's pretty much done, is like, well, never. Not for something as complex as human voice recognition.
Yeah, but you know what? Siri in its current state in a lot of other companies' eyes would be completely finished.
And we'd probably never get upgraded. You'd have to buy a new phone to get Siri 2.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, John, you have the latest, hottest phone not made by Apple, a Galaxy Nexus from Samsung, and I think you have the HSPA Plus version?
That is right. I have the HSPA Plus unlocked version. So
wow.
Here you go.
You're like Wolverine.
Yeah, so I can roam wherever I please.
And So here's the thing with me, and I'm gonna get my Apple fanboy Google hater stuff out on the table quickly. I went to Bell and I tried it for an hour, and first I was really annoyed with Bell because one unit was a dummy and the other had no power. So I made them charge it, and then I tried it out and it had no network connection. I don't understand why an iPhone can be on Wi-Fi 3 meters away, the Galaxy Nexus can't be, but whatever. I tried it out. It's absolutely beautiful. I think Mateus Duarte did a fantastic job. Some of it is a little WebOS-y, but he managed to change it up enough that it kind of fits Google's, honeycomb paradigm. When you move between apps, gorgeous. But the thing for me, and I admit this is completely UI snobbery, but it's something that I do with every phone that I try. I put my finger down in the photo app and I started moving it around and it did not track my finger. And if you're not certain what I mean, people in the chat room, if you take an iPhone, you put it down, you move your finger around, it will never, it's like you're touching paper and moving it. But the Nexus, that thing's got like what, an 8-core processor at 20 gigahertz each, and it wasn't tracking my finger, John. What's up with that?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I've had a generally good experience with it, but there's a certain amount of, I think you might have talked about this earlier, but there's a certain sort of inherent limitation of Android where because the graphics aren't at the same priority level as other things in the operating system, or they're at most equal priority, you get these things where it's trying to do something else in the background while you're swiping over or opening something, and so you get that sort of disconnect if it's too busy doing something else. Whereas on the iPhone, graphics are basically almost always the top priority, so everything just happens like that.
So I'm getting heat already in the chat room saying that it's insignificant. But Seth, this is why it's not insignificant to me. It's that to me that is core usability. That is almost one of the most important things to get right, because if it doesn't work, it breaks the feeling of the multi-touch experience. It's almost like in a game when the polygons don't render properly, or in a movie if you see the building turn sideways and you see the wooden things behind it, it breaks the illusion of what makes a tactile intimate experience with a device. And I personally, that's the kind of user I am. I find that hard to deal with. I know other people won't care. It's got LTE and a kickstand, baby. But to me, that's still important.
Yeah, well, you said it. That's the kind of user you are. And, I notice things like that too. And while some people don't see that as anything worth even thinking about, that's something that people like us will focus on because our idea of use is very different from other people. Some people want to know that their phone can do every single thing their laptop can do, and that's great. I want my phone to be different than my laptop. I don't want it to be a smaller version of my laptop. I want it to be a different experience, and I think Apple has set the bar at a certain height for what that experience delivers. And unfortunately, for me and for you and people like us, everything that doesn't match the tactility of that experience and the visual matching with the action is going to fall short on some level. Like, we've played with just about every phone under the sun, and very few of them can lay claim to that kind of, that very close meshing of the visuals and the touching that iOS does. And that's for the technical reasons that we already outlined. Basically, we said that, Android prioritizes different things in the system, and iOS prioritizes those visuals. And it's just a choice, it's basically a philosophical choice, how you want your phone's operating system to run. If you're okay with that, then knock yourself out. Android's
and some people will find it just as annoying the other way. Like they'll get annoyed that it's not loading data because it's rendering the UI, and I think that's perfectly understandable to me.
Exactly. That's exactly the point. Yeah.
You pick the phone that annoys you the least. John, what's the screen size like? Because we're used to that tiny 3.5 inch iPhone screen, and this I think has 4.3 or
4.65.
4.65. Wow.
It's like the best way of thinking of it is it's almost like in the movie, well, actually not even the movie, the novel for 2001. Like, my God, it's full of stars. It's just like it is genuinely big. At least for somebody like me, I have normal-ish hands. It's manageable, but it's not like it is kind of at that limit of where it would be considered acceptable. Like if you're say if you're a petite woman or
a barista.
Or a barista, yes. Then it's kind of I've heard people say it's just too big. So it does work well that way because it's as a data device, though. because you just have so much area to work with, and the resolution is so high. It's like 720p. That like it's sort of like the Dell Streak, except this one actually has half of a hope of fitting in your pocket. So, like this is actually this feels more like a phone, not like a tablet or phablet, like some people call it. And like you can use like phone/tablet, this phablet. So you can actually use it like a phone, and it's also got it probably won't come through in the video, but it's got this like very gentle curve on it.
Yeah.
So when you're actually putting it up to your face, like it doesn't feel like it feels almost like some ye old handset or something to that effect, rather than just like some slab that you've got up to your face. So,
do you kind of wish Apple would, because there's a lot of rumors that Apple might go to 4 inches for the iPhone 5, whatever the next iPhone is called. Having used bigger phones, do you think that's a sweet spot, or do you think they're better off staying at the same size?
I would like Apple to go to a bigger screen, actually. Probably not that huge Galaxy Nexus screen of doom, but it is definitely one of the things I noticed on the iPhone is that at least on the iPhone 4 and 4S, you tend to sort of pinch it, like your hands sort of come together because like there's so little space between one hand and the other while you're using it, and you have to like sort of move your thumb, like tuck your thumb under to actually type. So it's starting to get to that point where I'm noticing the difference between the iPhone and something bigger. This is a bit much, but something in between, like 4 inches, would probably be the sweet spot for me, I think.
It's interesting. It's also, the one you have is HSPA plus, but the Verizon one is LTE. I'm still hoping there'll be a GSM unlocked LTE version. Apple hasn't gone LTE either. So if you want the bigger screen, if you want LTE, there's certain features you can only get on a non-Apple handset still.
Yeah. So, and this thing has NFC. This thing has actually has.
But it has no Google. It has NFC, but no Google Wallet.
Yeah, well, at least not in the U.S. anyways. Thanks, Verizon.
Yeah.
There is a rumor that it'll come to the UK relatively soon, and they'll pretty much have to put it on the Galaxy Nexus because, well, they don't have a Nexus S 4G like they do in the US.
So that's the thing. That's the thing that interested me because last year sometime I wrote an article about fighting the real fight, because there was a bunch of people saying, don't. It's not so much about Apple or Google, and they were arguing back and forth. But to me, it's always been, Apple and Google, they're only evil insofar as their corporate interests are not always aligned with the user. So they'll do decisions that are good for their company, and some segment of the user base will not like that decision. But carriers almost every time seem to be almost user hostile. And Eric Schmidt has famously or infamously said, Android is better than Apple because it's open, and he's used that as a stick in his marketing. And, good for him. It's a smart move. It gets a large segment of the geek population motivated. But it's always been, like, not true to me, because Android is open for the carriers and manufacturers, and that was another great point. It's because Verizon doesn't want Google Wallet on it. Doesn't matter how open Android is. You can't have it on there. I got to wait until Jerry Hildenbrand roots the damn thing and makes me a ROM that has Google Wallet baked into it. And yes, that's an advantage of the open system, but it shows that it's open in a way that lets carriers do jerky jackass things to the users. And I still wish that Google would say, fine, you want to be a jerk, you can't have Gmail. You don't want to treat our users nicely, you can't have Android Market. No, don't put Amazon on, don't put Amazon on. But it's being open doesn't seem to be a user benefit feature. It's just, it's nice to have, but it doesn't always seem to benefit the end user.
Yeah, I think Google does need to, if they want to be more, if they want to have more of the positive side of Apple and so on, they do need to actually kind of put their foot down. In a sense, Microsoft has actually kind of got sort of getting closer to that balance. I don't think they're quite there, but where that idea where you have your hardware choice and your variety and things like that, but at the same time saying you have to let the user be able to remove your app. You can't flood the home screen with all kinds of crap that people don't actually want. You have to show a certain base level of respect for the user. So
I think it boils down to like if you want the bigger screen, if there is a feature in the phone that you like better, get that phone. It shouldn't be about what these companies say to us. They should be fighting for our attention and our money. They should be trying to wow us. And if there's a feature in a phone that's great to you, get that phone. Don't worry about whether this guy says it's open or that guy says they're integrated and the other guy isn't. That's all marketing BS. At the end of the day, does the phone fit the needs that you have?
yeah, exactly. And I will say that the Galaxy Nexus is probably one of those phones that actually seems to do quite a lot. Like it doesn't feel like one of those like the stereotypical Android phone where it's like, oh, hey, why do I have to put up with this custom interface that's slowing me down? Why, like, those bits of lag that you seem to find everywhere in some versions of Android where it's just like atrociously slow. No, you don't get that. Like this feels polished and complete. So, when I was writing a review of it, and I said like, this is probably the first Nexus phone, at least in my mind, where like yeah, you can actually sell it to Joe casual
Yeah.
user, and he might say, oh yeah, I get this. I actually kind of like this. Whereas
It's a much more consistent, coherent, user-friendly experience.
yeah, exactly, and that's saying something. Seeing as how Google basically had a direct hand in it, because we're used to Google always kind of having all these little ideas and experiments that it wants to launch, but never really having an exact idea of how to do it.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true. And again, the things I've always liked about Nexus is how smart Google has been with them. It was almost a joke at times that Palm would always announce a new Palm product 2 days before an Apple announcement. But Google's always been really good about waiting until the Apple hype is over and the iPhone is starting to look a little dated, and then putting out a Nexus, which kind of gets a lot of geek attention, gets a lot of press, and they usually put a lot of top end features in it, so it kind of holds that attention. And I think it's a good example. I mean, the Nexus S and the Galaxy Nexus haven't been quite as audacious as the original Nexus 1 was, but still, I think it is like the best strategy to counter program the iPhone so far.
Yeah, I would say so. Although that said, with the Verizon timing, it's like you start to think, like, maybe you could have been a little closer to Apple's window than usual. Because seriously, we only just found out like hours ago that they're finally going to when the Galaxy Nexus ships on Verizon, and mid-December is not usually the best time to actually try to get holiday sales for your phone because you've only got 2 weeks to do anything.
But Apple was also late this year, too. I mean, they kind of like, we'll show you. We're not going to give you a very big window. You want CES attention, you're going to have to wait.
Yeah. It's like, although there's late and then there's late. And that's kind of what Samsung and Google were doing.
Yeah, so in the chat room, someone's wondering why I spend time talking about non-Apple products. And for me, we don't exist in a vacuum. Apple is not the only one making smartphones, and it's specious to try to separate everything out. And I think it's kind of fake. And the easiest way to see that is that Apple did this incredible job, Seth, of disintermediating carriers. A couple things like MMS in the US and tethering, they've had to capitulate. But for the most part, you get the iPhone that Apple intended, where traditionally that wasn't the case. And now with Android, it is so powerful, so good, and so open that carriers kind of feel like they can use it. And maybe they'll do this with open source WebOS now too. They can kind of use it to re-intermediate themselves. And as a customer, I don't like that, because if there's one person that's even more controlling and counter my best interests than Apple, it's the carriers. So that's the kind of reason why I like to look at Android on these shows.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, Android at its core, the carriers have kind of co-opted it, and OEMs have co-opted it to create differentiation among the devices, and that's fine. And people like that. And there's a lot of different kind of flavors of Android now, and that's something for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And then the Nexus, up until this point, has been basically the iPhone equivalent of that kind of mentality. Like, it's completely untouched. This is direct from Google. this is how this version of Android is.
And yet Verizon can still delay it and put on bloatware.
Well, that's what I was kind of getting to, is that one of the things that's interesting now is that we're seeing that start to change. And so Verizon is putting on, I think it's just 2 apps. I was listening to Android Central last week. I think they said it's only 2 apps and they're not really bloatware because they're somewhat useful. I think one's like a data monitor and I don't know what the other one is. But it's just one of those things where while it may be useful, it's, in my mind, it's not pure Android anymore because they've touched it, you know?
But, in fairness, they tried that with the Nexus One, and they got crucified by the carriers. The carriers did everything they could to destroy the idea of a Nexus One.
Yeah, I mean, that was an idea that just really was before its time, or not ready for its time, or what, however you want to classify it. But that was something that I was kind of really hoping would take off because of the way that the iPhone is sold kind of, in every other country in the world, that you can kind of walk into stores, especially like, in the EU, and basically go, yeah, I want that phone and I've got 4 carriers I can pick from and I'm going to go with this one. And there's so much more flexibility in what you can do with the device that you've paid for and where you want to go with it. I was kind of hoping that Nexus One model would actually set a new precedent and we'd see more of that, but not so much. I mean, hopefully that'll still come to pass at some point.
Ironically, you can walk into an Apple store in most countries now and buy an unlocked phone directly from them or online.
That's true, yeah.
So they've actually done the model that Google tried to pioneer.
Yeah. But I mean, just circling back to your original point, Apple has done a fantastic job of not so much disintermediating the carriers, because they still have to play with them. They still have to, make certain concessions to get the phone onto the networks. But what they've done is they've positioned it in such a way that the carrier is the afterthought. You don't go, like, a lot of people still go to the Verizon or the AT&T store or whatever to buy their phone, and they get either what they've heard about or what somebody is willing to sell them. And Apple has a completely different position because they have one phone. They market that phone, that device to you, and then you go and ask for that thing either at that store or at the Apple store, and it's just the thing is completely flipped because it's a very different focus. It's not so much the carrier and then you pair a device with it. It's, this is the device I want and where am I going to use it?
What's interesting to me there, and I'll turn to John for this because he actually said he wanted to talk about this, is that you go from that to Nokia recently, and they're busy about to launch, or they've started launching their Windows Phone devices. And I forget who it was, John, but it was a Nokia executive who said that the youth do not like iPhones anymore. We're not hip. We're not cool. We're not the baristas that Samsung just accused us of being.
Yeah, it was a Nokia a marketing executive. I'm trying to remember exactly who it's. Finnish names are not exactly easy to remember, so it didn't exactly roll off the tongue. But yeah, it basically says like, oh, the youth are done with their iPhones and their Androids and the who's what's it. So Windows Phone is where it's at. Speaking of which, Nokia Windows Phone right here. So
which one is that? Is that the 800?
Yeah, it's the Lumia 800. So,
but the facts don't seem to bear that out because Apple seems to be doing gangbusters in the youth market. I forget who it was too. I'm not good with names tonight. I'm blanking. But there was a blogger who was recently in Finland and said that he saw almost no Nokias with the youth. They almost all had iPhones.
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is really just wishful thinking on the part of that executive that, like, well, of course you want it to be the young and hip thing because, I mean, what are you going to say? No, Symbian is old hat and Windows Phone is the kind of thing that you associate with people who still think Windows Mobile is cool.
Yeah,
no.
It's the Oldsmobile of phones.
Yeah, pretty much. It's almost branded itself.
Well, but that's the thing is like there was always this marketing theory that it was very difficult to sell Oldsmobile to kids or to young people because it had the word old in it. And Windows Phone, Microsoft thinks it's a real advantage to have the word Windows in it. But for many, Windows has a very beige box, what I use at the office, the PC that's always bugging me at home feeling to it. And if they'd called it like X Phone and had the Halo edition, I think it would register much better with the youth than calling it Windows Phone.
Yeah, just as long as they didn't call it Zune Phone. That wouldn't have worked so well.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing with Microsoft's branding is it's all over the place. They don't like Apple's very iMac, iPhone, iPod, iPad. It's very easy to identify. With Microsoft, you got to remember a lot of words,
Yes.
sometimes strung together in 19 word sentences.
Windows Phone 7.5 Mango Professional Edition.
With with a comma and a period. We did get iOS 5.1 this week, at least the beta 2 of it. The only really big change, actually, there was two things. One of them was kind of more funny than an actual change, but you can finally delete those non-safe for work photo stream photos that you either took or saved off the web and were causing you untold embarrassment as Apple TV screensavers.
It's an excellent addition to the software.
Yeah, and
Should have been in there from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
although, and again, I'm blanking on the name, on Google Plus today, there was someone saying that, I saw John Gruber link to it, that it's non-trivial. If you just want to store all the photos, it's very easy. You just take a photo, copy it, forget about it. But if you want to start deleting photos, you got to remember state and start syncing state between devices, which device has a deleted photo, which one doesn't. And it becomes a more complex process that arguably they should have had, but maybe it took them longer to do.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a lot harder to do that because there's a whole lot more communication. It builds on itself exponentially as you start adding seemingly little things like that.
Yeah.
But I think that's a feature that most people were just expecting because it seems to make so much sense, like in a very vanilla way of looking at it. Like, oh, I should be able to delete a picture and then it's gone, right? Well, no, actually, it's still there. Well, how do I delete it? You got to delete everything.
Husband, why is that those Lindsay Lohan pictures on my photo stream all of a sudden?
Yeah, it seemed like a really nuclear option,
Yes.
when they announced it, and it just seemed very un-Apple-y and very strange. But it's good. Good they came around on that.
And the other thing that was interesting is about, I forget how long it was, 5 or 10 minutes later, Mark Gurman from 9 to 5 Mac started exploding on Twitter because he usually opens up every new build and goes in there and looks for code string references. And he's previously found iPhone 5.1 and iPad 3.1. And this time, Apple decided to have a little bit of fun with the bloggers, and they put in iPhone 10.7, iPad 19.3, and also, I think it was like, what was it, John? There was like 100 references to fake devices in there.
Yeah, it's like there was a bit like usually it would go out like several generations for each model line. So you'd see like iPad 11.3 or like iPhone 9.2, like things that you probably won't see until like 2020 or something to that effect. So
Yeah.
it was.
I got a real kick out of this, but Mark took it personally.
Well, yeah, he said there's true. It's a fair. Obviously, Apple's making another iPad. They're making another iPhone, and the model numbers don't tell you very much besides whether it's going to have a significant internal upgrade. Because usually, if it's like a whole point, if it goes from 3.1 to 4.1, it's a significant upgrade. Like a comma 2 or a comma 3 is usually like a radio upgrade, like a CDMA version, or when the iPhone 3G got a 3G radio. But I guess they were tired. I don't think it's going to stop anyone, though, is it, Seth? Like they'll just go to deeper levels of the firmware and look for the actual devices Apple's testing.
Oh yeah, I mean that's certainly going to happen. People are going to keep poking around, but I think it was hilarious that they actually looked at this and went, "All right, you wanna sniff out devices and firmware bundles? Here you go. Here's some devices for you."
Now you got to work for it.
Yeah. We're not just putting them on the upper levels. You've actually got to decompile stuff.
Yeah. So it may take hours instead of minutes for them to figure out that there's a new iPhone or new iPad coming out.
If you want to find that reference, you're going to stay up all night, buddy. You're going to earn it.
Yeah, but like we've said like a half dozen times in the past few weeks, it's not like they're going to suddenly stop making the iPhone and the iPad and
What?
like,
They're going to make more?
It's almost like a yearly thing now. It's like New Year's Eve or something. I look forward to it every year.
You're treating it like a successful business or something.
Yeah, it seems to be gaining traction, as they say.
The kids like it. The kids like it.
Yeah.
Oh, not according to Nokia.
No, yeah, Apple's over. It's passe. It's the Crocs of phones.
The Crocs.
The other thing that was interesting this week is Apple is like it used to be in the old days you'd find a LinkedIn reference that Apple hired this guy from Microsoft or that guy from Google or Palm. Now Apple is kind of throwing their net wider. They hired comics from the Jailbreak scene. They got Peter. I don't know how to pronounce the name. Hayes.
Yeah,
Hayes,
something like that.
who made Mobile Notifier for Jailbreak, and they got him into the iOS team. Now they've hired Jan Michael. I don't know if it's Jan Michael, like Jan Michael Vincent. I'm not sure.
Sounds probably about right.
Jan Michael Cart, who did a bunch of iOS concept videos that were really cool. Notification Center, UI improvements, dynamic icons. He's going to intern at Apple. I don't think it's fair to say that within the next build or two we'll see all this stuff in iOS. But John, I like that Apple seems to be more open-minded about who they're bringing in.
Yeah, I think they realize that talent doesn't always come from the official source, like the person who dutifully, went through college or university, got their diploma, then spent a couple of years interning. Well, maybe not interning, but in an entry level job, and then gradually work their way up. Sometimes you get that 19-year-old kid who already has it all figured out, and if only somebody would give him a job, he'd be able to show them just how brilliant he actually is. So
it's like not everyone has to come from Next anymore.
Yeah.
Seth, do you think we will see some of these concepts, or do you think Apple more like the fact that he could come up with ideas and not the specific ideas that he implemented?
I think that's probably more accurate. I think that they're probably looking at the types of ideas that he had as opposed to, oh, we really like that thing that you did with that shading. Come work for us. I think they would probably be more inclined to look for people that had creative tendencies in the ways that they would kind of mesh with and like to bring into their fold and expand their own kind of palette. So I think that's probably a more accurate assessment in that they looked at his designs and said, yeah, these are the kinds of things we could see ourselves doing, just slightly differently. Let's get his thinking in here too.
That's it. Something to remember is that he is an intern, so it's not quite like they're bringing in some senior executive who's going to change the entire direction of the platform. He'll probably, my guess is, do little nudges here and there,
get rid of the stuffed leather.
Yeah. Exactly. More leather interfaces, more skeuomorphic interfaces. But
I do like a lot of the stuff we've been seeing lately, though. Like, we've looked at a couple things on Iterate, Renee, where, notification center alternatives and things like that that are just gorgeous. So I really hope we, see some new ideas float up.
Do you think, that was going to be my next question, because a lot of people complain, it's funny now because iOS is suddenly an old operating system. It used to be the new kid on the block, and people are saying that Springboard, the iOS home screen thing, has been too similar. I mean, Apple has added the fast app switcher, they've added folders, they've added notification center now, but in general, it's that grid of icons. John, do you think that Apple needs to start worrying about looking fresh, about the fashion aspect to the OS?
I think maybe a little bit, because there's only so far you can go with that grid of icons and that 4-icon tray at the bottom and this status bar that looks a certain way it does. But I think they have to resist the urge to go all sort of fashion designer on it and start obsessing about see, look at our new font, say on the Nexus, Galaxy Nexus here.
Roboto.
Roboto, that font, which does actually look pretty nice, by the way.
Yeah.
But don't worry about going that far. Google kind of has to, because their OS is so they need more cohesion, not less. So having that kind of art direction matters. But Apple's already kind of there. So more than anything, it's they may want to have something any visual refreshes should ideally be something that sort of dovetails with some functionality that they have. So, it'll be one of those things where if it happens, it's not necessarily going to happen right away or all in one dollop.
I think we're going to talk about this on Iterate, Seth, and see what the trade-off is between making it harder in terms of usability just to be fresher in terms of visual effects.
No, I totally agree with John. I was thinking the exact same thing. If we see iterations on the Springboard, UI, it's going to be very subtle. The way that they've introduced all the other kind of little changes to it along the way over the years that iOS has been in existence, I could see them doing something like...
Don't say a stitched leather Springboard. Don't say a stitched leather.
No. I was going to say, I'm still baffled by the fact that we can't move icons freely. Like they all kind of have to stack together and in the order that they fall on the screen. Like I want to have gaps in my
You know
screen.
why though, right?
No, why?
Because Steve Jobs does not believe in gaps in your icons. He wants them to be orderly.
Yeah, but you can still have gaps. They're just gaps all at the end.
It hurt his eyes.
I don't care. In any event, I think I could see them doing things where the springboard stays visually the way it is, but you're allowed a little bit more organizational freedom. I could even see them going as far to do widgety type things like what we see with the weather in Notification Center, but basically choose, default apps to kind of pin to the springboard or pin in Notification Center in a certain way. But I think it's still going to look the way that it looks for quite a long time.
So let me ask you guys this then, because we've seen these attempts at design refreshes. We have seen the new Twitter, or as I call it, hashtag Dick app.
Oh.
For me, it's all about the intent. Like I don't like people changing UI just to make UI look different. And I don't like them changing it to work for their business model. I like them changing it to make it better for the user. And there's a couple things, like Seth, we spoke about this before. There's a lot of beautiful apps that I can find absolutely no use for. They're so beautiful, I want to use them, but I don't need to, so I don't. With the new Twitter, it seems like it was like they sat down to make an app that a teenage Britney Spears fan new to Twitter would find slightly easier to use at the expense of a huge swath of their established user base.
Yeah, but all right, so yes, that's true. And obviously there were business decisions in place that kind of pushed the changes here, because nobody goes from like very explicit buttons to connect and discover. Like that doesn't mean anything. Like
And swipe up for DM.
If my mom were to join Twitter, she'd be like, what am I discovering? What does that even mean? It's not obvious anymore what you're supposed to do there. And although you hit that tab and there's like, oh, look at all these things you can do, that's not really Twitter to me. And that's not Twitter to a lot of people. Twitter is 140 characters, you talking, sometimes talking to other people, and then, maybe DMs. And that's Twitter. And so they continue to like latch all these things together in an effort to expand its services, but that's not really how people have used Twitter. And Twitter's services and Twitter's value has expanded based on how people have creatively come up with ways to use it. It hasn't been because Twitter has decided, oh, you know what? These things in this tab are really important and this is what people are doing. Like, I would venture to say that most of the really hardcore Twitter people, and of course, I'm including people like us in that and not the millions of people that are probably okay with all these changes.
Not the real Shaq.
Yeah, exactly. The hardcore crowd looks at this and is like, why would they even do this? This doesn't even make sense. Like why would he add this entire new, musical number in the beginning of Jabba's palace that doesn't even fit in? It's so ridiculous. So there are changes that obviously are not with users in mind, and that's troubling to someone like me who constantly thinks about things in terms of what do users need, because that's gospel to us, at the office. That's what we always tell people, like, listen, your business decisions are great, but you're not going to get success from driving business decisions down people's throats. You got to figure out what they want, and that's going to drive all new business criteria for you, and it's still going to be productive. It's just going to be not the way you're expecting.
John, did you stick with Twitter or did you look elsewhere?
I'm still using the official Twitter app, but I've noticed that there's definitely a different experience between the iPhone version and the Android version, because the iPhone version is at least still nice and responsive and so on. Like, I've got the Galaxy Nexus here, and this thing kind of this dual core thing kind of chugs on because it's trying to do everything in line on the Twitter feed, so it just kind of goes. It's just not that kind of ideal experience. So on Android, yeah, I'd probably be heading for the exits. I'm not quite there yet on the iPhone, but that's also because I'm an experienced user, so I know where to go. I know that all the direct messages are in the me section now for some reason. And a lot of the way I use it isn't going to be fundamentally broken.
Yeah, it's just it's been interesting to watch Twitter over the last year. It's It's funny because we did this post on the top 10 Twitter alternatives. We did the same thing when the Dick Bar came out, so it seemed fitting. And it is amazing how many really good designers decide to make Twitter apps. And we have an embarrassment of riches. I mean, the Icon Factories, Twitterific, which is the godfather of iOS apps in a way, Tweetbot, which has all the Tapbots visual goodness, Twitter Later New, which is kind of like, if you've seen Path and you've seen this new kind of, I don't know what the right word for this is, Seth, but there's a new wave of apps that are highly layered. They have a lot of transparent compositing, a lot of stretch and animation in them, a lot of eye candy kind of a feel to it. It's not always as functional, but what it does very beautifully.
You mean fancy pants apps?
Fancy pants. We're official. Yeah. It's gonna be fancy pants TM apps. That's the thing with Twitter is earlier in the year they tried to sabotage, or at least make very nervous the third-party Twitter developers. But because of those developers, we have a lot of alternatives now, including apps that look a lot like Lauren Brichter's Twitter. And I think we mentioned this on iPad Live, John. But it was amazing timing that Brichter left Twitter right before his entire UI paradigm was thrown out the window.
Yeah, sadly, I'm not sure if you'll necessarily be able to go back and say, can I get my old code, guys? Because I just want to release like Tweety 3 or something. And then like everybody will be happy and I'll make lots of money.
I was hoping that they would take a hint from HP and open source Tweety for the good of the community. If you want it, compile it and run it as ad hoc. The other interesting thing it happened a lot actually yesterday and today. Microsoft they released OneNote for iPad, but they also released Connectimals. I think I'm saying that right. Connectimals for iPhone and iPad, and they just released an Xbox Live app. There was another one today too. What was the other?
I was going to say Microsoft Tag, but I don't think they've actually updated that for the iPhone yet.
There was like I'll take a quick look, but there was like 3 or 4 Microsoft apps that were released for Windows Phone and iOS, not for Android, interestingly, because Google does make licensing money off Android, so they have some skin in that game. Seth, is this the new Microsoft? Is this the Microsoft that used to make Office, still makes Office for Mac thinking, and not the Microsoft that's... Sorry, let me rephrase that. Microsoft licenses ActiveX, which hurts the Windows Phone division, but helps the Exchange division. This seems like more of the same. Like there's been rumors they're going to make Office, that Microsoft is again benefiting their software at the expense of their platforms.
I think you're kind of getting at the root of this, which is that Microsoft is making inroads into platforms like iOS that they haven't really in the past. I mean, there's been apps like, what was it, PhotoSynth, and there were some other ones.
Sea Dragon.
Yeah, and they were cool, and they were kind of like labby things that like didn't really catch on, but now they're kind of releasing a bunch of stuff, and I think it's very smart because Microsoft has always been a presence on the Mac forever, and Microsoft's presence on iOS has been kind of middling at best up till now, but it makes sense for them to get as many users as they can involved in their own ecosystem of apps.
It's SkyDrive, that was the third one.
Oh, SkyDrive,
right.
Yeah. It makes sense for them to get as many users as possible into their ecosystem and into their apps and services because ultimately that's brand exposure for them. So whether it happens on Windows Phone or it happens on iOS, people are using Microsoft services and it's in front of them. It's on their brain, and that's still valuable. You know, they're never going to get everybody who has an iPhone to give it up and go to Windows Phone. I think they realize that, but they can still release really good, best-in-class apps.
Everyone on CBS
services.
uses Windows Phone now, Seth.
Yes, I know they do. Hawaii Five-0 is rife with Windows phones.
Yep.
But I think it's a good thing for them to do. I think it makes a lot of sense. Office has been on the Mac forever, and it's a very popular app. I mean, people have issues with it. I have personal issues with it, of course, but it just makes sense for Microsoft to do that. They're a software company. They should put their software in as many places as possible and get that brand exposure.
But John, do you think that there's people in the Windows Phone division going, "Oh, come on! You gave them ActiveX, now you're giving them SkyDrive. I mean, the Hawaii Five-0 guys are going to buy iPhones for Christ's sake."
Yeah, I think there is probably that sense because Microsoft has this tendency occasionally to want to treat their platform like an island. I think, people like Mac users have often complained, like they think there's this conspiracy theory that they deliberately wreck some feature in Office or Windows Live Messenger or things like that, so that like in this like sort of vain hope that this Mac user or this iPhone user is going to say, "Oh, well, that's it. Then I'm going and buying a Windows PC. I've had it." So,
Well, it's
but
interesting because Google has always been very. I mean, Apple provides almost no support to anyone else. They'll give you iTunes for Windows and make you suffer for it, but they don't do any mobile software for other companies. Where Google has always, since the beginning, been on the iPhone, and they've just released a Gmail app, just updated their Gmail app. And I wonder if Microsoft is more and more considering Google as their competition. You know, they kind of own the markets they own, and Google's coming after them, and it's strategically important for them to have SkyDrive because you have, Google software there, or to provide clients for their IM clients, just so that people on iPhone aren't using Google all the time. They're also using Microsoft.
yeah, I think. See, what was I going to say? Yeah, like for Microsoft, Google really is the opponent because Google is the one who most closely emulates the model that they had with, say, Windows Mobile and to some extent Windows Phone, where it's like they don't make the hardware, they just license out the software, and everybody goes on their merry little way, and they treat it kind of like a little mini PC. So, like for them, I guess like supporting Apple with like iPhone apps is basically a way of like, okay, well, at least it's going to be a 2-horse race, even if Windows Phone is like what 1.5% if Gartner was right. So like they have to do something to keep their name out there.
Thank you for not saying rounding. Our WP Central site will appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And the other thing that was kind of in the news a bit was Bluetooth 4.0, because Apple's been increasingly supporting Bluetooth 4.0, not in all their new devices, but I believe the MacBook Airs have it, the iPhone 4S has it. And there was a report from the Apple accessories program that they were pushing Bluetooth 4.0 rather heavily. And it seems, John, like a bit of a nebulous term. Like people were used to Bluetooth 2.1, EDR, and what happened to Bluetooth 3? We skipped all over to Bluetooth 4. Why do I have it? Where's my thing? But it's not really about making a better Bluetooth, right? It's about lower power consumption and creating more options for Bluetooth.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there were some Bluetooth 3 phones and devices and so on. Like the original Galaxy S had Bluetooth 3.0 on it. Not that anybody really used it for Bluetooth 3. But 4.0 is important because it's for using all those gadgets where you really don't want it, like, it doesn't need to constantly ping you, or it doesn't need to ping you with nearly as much data as, like, say, your mouse or your Bluetooth headset or so on. So things like those ANT plus, like exercise gears, like those heart rate monitors, or things like that, and hospitals tend to want to use that kind of thing. So it's really handy for that kind of thing, because then you can actually keep this thing going for a long time without looking at your iPhone and saying, "Oh, I have 10% of battery left. This is going to die any moment now."
Yeah, I wonder, Seth, because of course there's rumors of Apple making a television, and because Apple has Bluetooth 4.0, that's gotta factor into the television. But is there a glaring hole in accessories? Is Apple? I tend to think that Apple looks at a situation, sees how it sucks, and tries to make it better. Is there a big suckage in the accessory market that Bluetooth 4.0 can address?
Well, I guess that could tie into all the rumors we've heard about, Steve, quote unquote, cracking the interface to TV. I can't envision in my mind what that would even look like. I would imagine that Bluetooth has something to do with it, probably because it just makes good sense. And especially if, the power consumption is really low and it has, an advanced protocol that's going to send and receive different signals and whatever. It makes sense that it would be that, because it's probably not going to be an IR blaster that you have to plug in and stick to your TV, and it's probably not going to be an RF transmitter, because that's just like yesterday's tech, So it would have to be Bluetooth 4.
Yeah, I can picture them having like some kind of like how it might be voice activated. I could picture them having like some little clicker or something, and like you want Bluetooth 4.0 for that, because it's like something that you might use a little bit, but like you don't want this thing to be out of batteries in like a week. You want this thing to last for like 3 months before you even need to think about replacing the battery on it.
Yeah, it's because Apple. I mean, they started putting in accessory compatibility with iOS. I forget it was. I think it was iOS 3. They started really pushing it, and you saw a couple like blood pressure meters and stuff, but it never took off. Like some of the other things that they did, and it's just been on this slow burn. I mean, yes, we now have these iPhone controlled helicopters and stuff, but there seems like there's such potential for the iPhone as an interface to so many other pieces of equipment around us, and it's just waiting to reach critical mass.
Yeah, definitely feels that way.
The last thing I wanted to touch on tonight is someone from the Chronic Dev team, Pod2G, was talking about Jailbreak. And Jailbreak is interesting because the iPad 2 has been out for a long time now. The iPhone 4S has been out just for a short time, but it seems like the Apple A5 system on a chip devices are proving much more difficult to jailbreak, especially if you want an untethered jailbreak than the previous devices. Seth, I know we kept talking about how iOS 5 provides so much functionality that there is fewer and fewer reasons to jailbreak, but it seems like it's also getting harder to jailbreak. What is it? What do you think that does to the jailbreak community? Do they kind of just batten down? And, I mean, Apple's hiring jailbreak developers and fight on harder, or do you think Apple's trying to take away the casual jailbreak sector?
Well, is that kind of an oxymoron, a casual jailbreak sector? Like, I don't see regular people jailbreaking. Occasionally, if they ask about it, they're like, hey, can you jailbreak my phone? I want to do that other stuff and get themes and things. But I still think it's an edge case to Apple at best in terms of what the difficulties are doing to the hackers. I think that they're probably working twice as hard, and I think it's probably harder on them because I would think by now they've thought we really should have cracked this just because it seems like it's been so long. But I don't know if that speaks more to the changes that Apple's made in the system on a chip architecture or just changes overall between the hardware and the software that have kind of closed a lot of doors for them. I mean, essentially, jailbreak in a lot of cases relies on exploits. And if, there's no perfect system that has no exploits, but if the exploits are much, much harder to find, it's just going to take that much longer to find them and, of course, exploit them. So I think...
And Apple patched a lot of the exploits that they were hoping to use in the last update.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's always been a cat and mouse. We know that. It's always been fun to follow. I mean, a lot of those guys are some of the best.
Yeah, but it sounds like Apple's like not chasing the mouse so much, just saying, here's a lounge chair, here's a drink, sit down, relax. You don't have to work that hard anymore because it's so systematic. I mean, they gave a lot of jailbreak features to iOS 5. They hired a lot of jailbreak developers. They made a chipset that's much harder to jailbreak. It seems coincidental to me that all these things are happening at once. There's over-the-air updates now.
It could be that they're looking at, like we've always said, jailbreak is like an incubator for them. They look at that and go, oh, that's cool. We should do that and make it part of the OS. And that there's a definite possibility that they're looking at that. But if that's the case, surely they haven't thought of all the things that industrious jailbreakers could think of. I mean, I've seen a couple of hacks come out in the past 6 months that I'm like, oh my God, I need this jailbreak to happen so I can do this. And it's like, it's not anything that Apple would really even think to do, but it looks really useful or really cool, and I want to do it. So if Apple's ever used the jailbreak community as, a test bed, why would they squelch that? Why wouldn't they just kind of like keep it at arm's length and let it do its thing?
What do you think, Jonas?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, actually, with the jailbreak clampdowns, they may feel like they have to do it anyways because, given how much malware is starting to be an issue on Android right now. I mean, it's still not quite at that crisis point by any means, but it's starting to become more and more of something in the consciousness. So, I mean, jailbreaks are based on security exploits, so the harder they make it to jailbreak, the less likely they are to end up with some kind of situation like, say, that old Windows blaster worm, if you remember that,
Yes.
where people were running around with their hair on fire, because you hook up your computer and 5 minutes later you're infected. You don't want that happening on your phone, ever. So I don't think they mind that much about making it harder for jailbreaks to happen.
No, you're right. I think the focus that's moving toward mobile malware is definitely pushing them in that direction, without a doubt.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Seth, did we forget anything? Did we leave anything off? Was I negligent in any way?
No, I think we covered everything. I'm looking through the notes. I think we get everything.
Nice. So where can we find out more about you, sir?
You can find me on Twitter at Seth Clifford. You can find me on iPad Life and on Iterate with you, of course, and Mark Edwards of Bajango. And if you'd like to check out some of the apps and sites and work that we do, please visit our site, nfidm.com. We're Nickelfish.
Awesome. And John, what about you?
Okay, well, if you want to find me on Twitter, it's John Fingus. That's JONFINGAS. You can also find I do a good chunk of the writing at Electronista. That's just think Electronista, like a fashionista or Zapatista or something like that.
Yeah, I just assume now that the article's by you. That's my general. Unless proven otherwise, I assume it's by you.
Yeah, I write entirely too much, I'll tell you that.
I know the feeling.
Christy in the chat room said barista.
Well played, Christy.
I have a Samsung Android phone. I'm not a barista.
Yes.
I'm with it.
Yeah, you're a hipster.
Yeah.
You can find me at Renee Ritchie. You can find all of us at Tippy. You can email us at podcast@tippy.com or leave a comment on the post when it goes live. We are here each and every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Our companion show, iPad Live, is when again, Seth?
iPad Live is on Sundays.
Same bat time, same bat channel. For all of our shows, just head on over to mobilenations.com/shows. We have a plethora of them now. Everything from crackray.com, androidcentral.com. If you want to hear everything that we said on this show called wrong and stupid, go over there and you'll get the opposing point of view. We also have stuff like Zen and Tech, Iterate, Super Functional. We've started Stock Talk. We're going to be launching Mobile Nations Enterprise this week. Not the Starship, the actual business use scenarios. And we have more to come. Girls Gone Gadgets, Monday Brief. It's on iTunes now. Head on over to iTunes. If you haven't already, please subscribe and leave a rating. It encourages iTunes to feature us, and we would really appreciate that. Thank you, everyone in the live chat room, for joining us. You guys are fantastic. You make the show so much more fun. And we will see you next time. Thanks a lot, Seth. Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Welcome.